Hi, welcome to my review of Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, directed by David Yates. A fantasy film centered on Newt Scamander, a magizoologist who seeks to track down, document, and save mystical creatures from across the globe. However, after certain creatures manage to escape from their safe, comfy confines of Newt's magical suitcase and run amok in a 1920s New York City, Newt, a witch, and a No-Maj band together to save the Muggle world from the dangers that lurk from such a situation. So as you can tell from the shirt that I am wearing right now that I am a Potterhead. I haven't really read the books, I've only read Prisoner of Azkaban, although that is something that is on my list to do because I love the movies just so damn much. As a side note, I've always been more of a visual person, so therefore I've always been more drawn to movies as a narrative medium. And these are movies that I have grown up with ever since I was 9 years old seeing Sorcerer's Stone or Philosopher's Stone in the theater. And what's one of the many cool things about the Potter series is that this is a film series, this is of course a book series that grows up and matures with its audience, with its readers. With each book or with each film, it gradually gets a little darker and takes on more complex themes. And if you want to talk about great fantasy films, you have to bring up Alfonso Cuarón's contribution to the Harry Potter series, and that is Prisoner of Azkaban. And then there's David Yates' contribution, his greatest contribution, and that is Deathly Hallows Part 2. Not only is that one of the best fantasy films of all time, but it's one of the best grand finales that one could ever dream of. And man, does it get those emotions flowing. That memory sequence is tough, and that scene in the Forbidden Forest is much easier. But to answer my question, do I think Fantastic Beasts is up there with the great Harry Potters? And my answer is hell no. Not even close. But I do think this is better than 1, maybe 2. So that's something. Fantastic Beasts is pretty much exactly how I thought it was going to be going into the film. I knew it wasn't going to be like Harry Potter. I knew these characters weren't Harry, Ron, and Hermione. These are new characters I've never been introduced to, so there's that. However, I knew I was going to have fun with this film, which indeed I did. I knew I was going to get that feeling of nostalgia in certain parts, especially towards the beginning where you have the Warner Brothers logo creeping towards the screen. I also must mention that I was never once bored watching this film, whether it be in the lighthearted moments or the darker moments. Lighthearted moments focusing on the creatures, sort of introducing the audience to all of these, and there's a whole array of these things. The CGI for these creatures, they do look good, and I remember actually listening to reviews and hearing people complain about the darker Harry Potter, saying that they basically sucked out all the fun and basically took out all the wonder that was associated with the initial Harry Potters. And for all those people who complain about that, this is J.K. Rowling, this is David Yates saying, okay, well, here you go, and you get it in loads. There is moments of wonder with the magic and with the creatures. There's a lot of lighthearted comedic moments, like one running gag throughout the film with this hedgehog / platypus that's just a huge kleptomaniac. On the other end, you have this relatively bleak and freaky subplot that does later tie into the rest of the film, featuring Ezra Miller as he plays this character named Credence. And I gotta say, this whole subplot, the actual presentation of it all, is kind of freaky. It's kind of like Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children, but without the magic. And if Miss Peregrine were just batshit crazy. So since I'm on the subject of actors and characters, of course I want to talk about Eddie Redmayne as Newt Scamander, who I really like as the protagonist here. He's very different from the typical leading man that you see in movies. He's painfully introverted, he speaks very quietly, he mumbles his words, he doesn't really make a whole lot of eye contact, and sometimes he just acts downright weird. Though if there's any problem that I have with Newt Scamander, and this is a problem that I have with all the characters in this film, is that there's not a whole lot of depth here. I don't know that much about these characters, even coming from this film. And that does feel like a conscious effort. In fact, I know it's a conscious effort on J.K. Rowling's part because it's her way of feeding you little tiny bits and pieces to keep you intrigued throughout this 5-part series. Unfortunately, as of now, it does feel a little unnecessary, and it does make the characters come off as a little flat. That said, by the time we reach the end of the series, it may feel slightly different. However, what I do know of Newt is that he loves his creatures, so that is a positive, and he seems to be carrying some pretty heavy emotional weight. I'm not quite sure what that is as of yet, which would be nice to know because being somebody who is watching the film, it's nice to sort of be in on what the protagonist is feeling. Though I just can't say what that is as of yet, of course. Despite me not knowing a hell of a lot about these characters, what is a standout about them are the performances. They're all very, very top-notch, Eddie Redmayne especially, and there's also Dan Fogler, who plays the No-Maj. The no magic person. He plays this New York baker named Kowalski, and I could see some people maybe not being too fond of him. As for me, I quite liked him a lot. I found him to be just incredibly innocent and charming. There's also Catherine Watterson and Alison Sudol, who kind of is almost playing like a sexy version of Luna Lovegood, or at least that's how I saw the performance. But it's a fun performance, at least I thought it was. They play these sister witches who are also flappers. As for anything else that I want to mention, of course, I need to bring up the climax, which is the typical grand CGI light show. However, what I will give points to it for is that it at least coincides with the message of the film, which is learning to accept who you are, what you are, not being afraid about what other people think of you, not giving a shit about what other people think of you. Basically, if you don't do that, then you'll become like this gigantic black sand mist thing that like goes around and attacks people. What I'll also give it points for is that it does look good, it does sound good, and there's some actual emotion behind it. And speaking of emotion, there are some moments in the movie that I actually did find to be somewhat moving, at least in their presentations they are. Overall, I do have a lot of faith with Fantastic Beasts. I don't think this is an exceptional introduction, but I do think this is a very good one that's going to lead up to something quite great later on. At least that's what I hope. So with all that said, I'm going to give Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them a very light 4 out of 5. If you are somebody who has seen Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, then do let me know your thoughts on it. And as always, I'm Colin Kirkland, and thank you so much for watching.